Deposits in Argenta are used to group funds from different sources in the system, like donations and payments, that have been deposited into a bank account as an individual transaction. I'm Andy O'Connor, the Chief Financial Officer for Argenta, and in this video I'll give you a quick overview of deposits and how they work as part of the General Financials module in Argenta. Okay, jumping in here. You can get to deposits by choosing General Financials from the main menu, then Deposits. Just like any section in Argenta, you'll be given a list of all the deposits that have been made. You can filter them, sort them, or export them to Excel or Google Sheets, whichever works for you. You can also search for a deposit if you know the ID or the description of the deposit. You can delete individual deposits. You can add a new deposit that enters it into the system and sends you over to the workspace to enter all of the details. Then here, if you have a deposit that's been entered already, you can open it up here, and that takes you to the workspace where you can view or modify the deposit. All right, let's run through a whole scenario for having to enter a deposit from start to finish then. Maybe today you received funds through Argenta and Stripe. You probably took in some donations, you might have sold tickets to your upcoming event, and you might have had someone make a miscellaneous payment for a reimbursement that they owed you. Each of those items get entered into different sections in the system, right? So donations go into the fundraising module, event tickets into the event management module, and so on. But Stripe makes one deposit with all of those individual transactions included. So when you go to reconcile your account against your bank statement or your bank's online portal, however you do that, you'll see one deposit. You'll need to mark that total amount as reconciled. And to do that, you'll need to have just one transaction to use in the reconciliation process. All right then, let me show you from start to finish how to enter a deposit. To add a deposit then, you click the Add New button. Like I said before, the system will automatically add a new deposit. So this is the workspace, and more specifically, the Details tab for the new deposit. The first thing you'll do is choose an associated constituent. Now, this is optional. You don't necessarily need to have one. In the scenario we're running through here, we'll use Stripe, and many of you probably will too, because if you use any of the Argenta e-commerce forms, you'll have similar occurrences to what I'm demonstrating here. Next, you will designate the deposit to the appropriate fund, if you use fund accounting and you need or want to do that. And then you'll choose the checking or bank account where the deposit was made. So this is absolutely required because the funds had to go somewhere for this to be a deposit at all, right? Next, you'll enter a very brief description for the deposit. This description shows up in the list, so you'll want to keep it short. You probably noticed I skipped this field here, associated merchant fees expense. This is important to talk about because if your transactions occurred through Argenta using Stripe, those fees were already accounted for, and you wouldn't enter anything here. I'll just explain how that does work then. There is a small fee to process a transaction through Stripe. That fee isn't deducted from the transaction though, because that wouldn't give full credit to the contribution or purchase. Instead, the fee is added to your business expense manager as e-commerce fees. That offsets the fees in your general journal, making sure that balances are correct and everything can be reconciled properly. So to be clear, you would not use this for a Stripe deposit that occurred in Argenta. It's here in case for some reason you have a need for it, but it wouldn't typically be used when entering a deposit. Okay, moving on here. The next few fields are self-explanatory, really. You enter the date the deposit was made, and the system will enter the current date when the deposit is added. So you can change that if it happened on a different day. Then, of course, you'll enter the total amount of the deposit here. If you have a reference number, you can enter that in this field. Then finally here, if your organization is divided into chapters, divisions, or departments, and this deposit is specific to one or all of those, you can select those here. You can also choose a district and precinct. These are typically used by our political customers. But if you have a need for them, then of course you can use them too. As a side note here, users in Argenta can be given permissions for specific chapters, divisions, departments, districts, and precincts. And what that means is if a user is relegated to a department, for example, they won't be able to see records for other departments in the system. There are several layers of permissions, and this is one way to set those. Permissions can be as broad or as granular as you need. All right, back to deposits now. Once you've finished setting all the fields on the Details tab, you move to the Deposit Items tab. Don't worry about clicking Save Anywhere here if you're switching tabs. When you switch tabs anywhere in Argenta, the tab you've modified is always saved automatically. Okay, now this part is very important. This is where you associate all of the individual transactions to this cumulative deposit. If you don't take this step, you'll be missing a critical understanding of your financials. I'll show you how to do this and explain what I mean as we go through it. So in this scenario, you've taken in a donation through Argenta and Stripe. You've also had a member pay their membership fees on your public membership form. You'll notice both the membership payment and the donation are designated to the account undeposited funds. These transactions must be assigned to undeposited funds because individually they haven't been deposited into any account, have they? This is what allows us to select them here in the deposit. To do that, you'll click the Add Undeposited Fund Items button. There shouldn't be many transactions sitting in undeposited funds because transactions don't stay there. It's used to create a deposit, and that's all it should be used for. Deposits should be entered into the system as quickly as possible because doing that will make things much easier. All right, so what you're doing here is selecting all the transactions that were deposited. You can select all of the items at once if they're all a part of this particular deposit, or you can select them individually. If there were more transactions here for some reason that weren't a part of this deposit, you wouldn't select them. Once you do that, you click the Add Selected Items to this deposit button here. That closes the window, and you can see the transactions you selected with the total number of transactions and the total amount of those transactions as well. Now, that total amount must match the total of the deposit here. Since it does, we know the deposit was entered correctly, and that's all there is to it. Now, a couple of other things here in the workspace. Let's go back to the Deposit Items tab. Of course, your transactions will always be here. When you click this button now, though, you'll see there are no remaining transactions in undeposited funds, and that's exactly right. There shouldn't be. Like I said earlier, like you don't keep transactions there. You have no reason to, and it'll just confuse things later when you need to make another deposit. Okay, I'll wrap this up by going over these other few tabs here. I talked about permissions earlier, and like every workspace in Argenta, you can set record level permissions here on the Record Permissions tab. You can lock the record where then only master admins or users listed here can even open it. Or you can set view only permissions, so only master admins or users listed here can modify the record. You can use the Related Files tab to upload as many files as you like that pertain to this deposit, if you have them. This could be a receipt or a statement, whatever you like. You can use the Deposit Notes tab to enter notes about the deposit. You can add as many notes as you need to. This works the same way in every workspace in Argenta. All right then, one last thing here. I'll show you how this deposit looks in your bank account register. In your chart of accounts, choose the bank account you deposited your funds into. You'll click the green Account Register button because we want to have a look at the register and the reconciliation page. Here's the deposit here in the register, and if you reconciling the account, you have just one transaction to reconcile against the bank statement, which is the right way to do it. Right then, that's all there is to it. I've given you a comprehensive overview of deposits and how they work in Argenta. For more information on the general financial modules or any module in Argenta, have a look at our knowledge base at argentasoftware.com/kb.